All right, good evening, everyone. Before I start the meeting, is there anyone who has not signed in that wishes to do so, especially if you have a desire to speak during the public comment period at the end of the meeting? Okay, thank you. So with that in mind, please, I'll call the special meeting of the Merrimack Town Council. This is a work session regarding the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline. As a work session, it's typically the council dealing with the particular issues that we're going to work on this evening. Some of those are on some of the materials that were available for you as you came in. This is not a normal, regular meeting with the type of agenda that you normally see here. This is more akin to what we've done for our budget hearings or our budget meetings, where we review budgets and we review department requests, and we deal with it in that fashion. So that's the process that we're going to use tonight. We ask that you help us out with that. And as I said, at the end of the meeting, there is a portion on the agenda for comments from the public. Okay, will you all rise, please, and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A couple of announcements. Thursday, February 12th at 7 p.m. here in the Matthew Thornton Room is the regular council meeting and public hearing regarding the proposed fiscal year 2015-2016 operating budget. The next regular council meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 26th in this room again at 7 p.m. And this is a regular council meeting with no public hearing attached. Okay. We decided to call this meeting as the council to discuss the various issues that are involved from our perspective as to what actions we might take or direction we might find to give to our staff to assist us in gathering information and responding to requests and those sorts of things. And one of the other pieces that's happened here is that we are driven by the state statutes regarding our budget preparation with the deadlines that we have to meet and the issues that we have to deal with. That process has ended. We did that on Monday when we passed the final recommended budget, and so we can now spend some more time on dealing with this particular issue. And the again, this is as I said before, it's not considered a one-shot deal, but the beginning of a process. This is not a sprint on this one. This is going to take 2 years at least, maybe 3, before this whole thing gets resolved. So it's not a sprint. It's a long haul. If you've ever dealt with administrative proceedings, it's very detailed. It's very long. There are schedules that they provide, and sometimes those schedules slip. For instance, we've asked for an extension of the initial comment period. Okay, we have not received any response yet from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. All right. So we're trying to attempt at determining all of the variables that need to be identified and examined from our perspective, and examined related to the pipeline information. It is again. Let's see. We've also provided a designated email address for your comments this evening for those of you at home, or if you're here and you don't wish to come up and speak, there's an opportunity for you to make a comment about this meeting. All right, at this particular time. This is something that we've never done before, and it was something that I suggested that we undertake, and we haven't decided how we're going to make all of those comments available yet, but they are public records. At some point, we'll figure out a way in the next couple of days to make those available to people either online or in hard copy, okay? So that we meet the spirit and intent of the right to know law, okay?
What's the email address? kmpipeline@merrimacknh.gov.
Thank you.
I'll repeat again.
kmpipeline@merrimacknh.gov. Okay, now, well, the way that we'd like to start at this point, are there any comments any questions from the council? Okay, we ready to get into this? Yep. You fire that up for us, Paul. What we're trying to do here is to show you what the work that we've done since this process started. Okay, there was a lot of comments at the last meeting that we didn't seem to be caring about this, that we didn't seem to be paying attention to it, and that we were not moving in an expeditious fashion. Okay, as I said earlier, we have a lot of other things that we have to pay attention to. We are governed a lot by statutes and what our timing is on how we deal with issues. So this is a pretty extensive presentation, but I will not attest to the fact that it's absolutely completely accurate as to the actual steps that we took. Okay, we tried to reconstruct it as best that we could with the documentation that we have in the office. Again, those are things that are matters of public record at this point and are available for your inspection. Okay, so at this point, are we up yet? Yeah. Can you have him put the back one on? And close. Okay. So, this all started on September 15 when the Tennessee Gas Pipeline Company notified the requested authorization to use the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's pre-filing process for the Northeast Energy Direct project. That's the formal name. On October the 2nd, this request was approved and given a docket number, PF 14-22-000. So if you're going to contact the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that's the way to get your information or your comments directly to that docket at the federal level. Okay? On our website, on the town's website, there are several email addresses to FERC for various forms of information and the direct comment to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Okay. On November 3rd of last year, the proposed gas line project was discussed at the Conservation Commission meeting. At that time, we had talked about the connection. I'm the rep to the Conservation Commission. That meeting, I believe, was when we talked about the fact that a smaller lateral was being run up through Hollis and was terminating somewhere in Merrimack on Route 101A. If you drive down there on the east side of the road, you will see the typical standards for a gas pipeline. Those yellow crooked pipe things that stick up out of the ground to indicate that that's where the pipeline is. And based on our look at the map, it looks like that they were making that connection in that area. Okay. On November 5th, Kinder Morgan filed with FERC the draft resource report, general project description, including alternatives, and what their updated stakeholder list was. On November 8th, there was an article in the Telegraph about shifting the pipeline, the route through southern New Hampshire. Okay? There was also a day or two later, another one in the Union Leader, which was essentially a rehash of the Telegraph article. On November 17, the gas line project was discussed at the Conservation Commission meeting that the route had been changed. However, at that time, we didn't have much of an indication of where it would go, and what maps we had seen were rather large-scale maps and didn't really give us a good sense of what was going on. However, it was on the Conservation Commission's radar. I conveyed information back to the council regarding that. On the 25th of November, Joel Mayola, who's acting on behalf of the Kinder Morgan, sent an email to the town requesting a private meeting. Okay. On November 26th, Chairman Harrington instructed the town manager not hold a private meeting with the pipeline group and stated that she believed that it was imperative that we are transparent in all of our discussions on this topic and therefore should be presented in a public forum. Mr. Mayola was notified on November the 26th of our desires, and we canceled the December 5th meeting that he desired. And we made the request that they all be held in public. He responded on the 28th, stating that Kinder Morgan looks forward to taking part in a public presentation to the town. On December 1, the proposed gas line project was again discussed at the Conservation Commission meeting. On December 5th, Robert Varney, Executive Vice President for Normando Environmental Consultants, stopped by Town Hall to introduce himself to the town manager as the local environmental company hired by Kinder Morgan. Kinder Morgan submitted supplemental information to the FERC to reflect the revision to the proposed route for the project. That filing included a full description of the revised route and the proposed facilities for the project, and also an updated stakeholder list. Now, if I could digress a little bit. Once we made the decision regarding not holding a private meeting with Kinder Morgan, we established a section on the town's website where we started to populate it with the correspondence and the information that we were getting from various sources. So there's other information out there. It's not all in that place, but in terms of what we have received, it goes on there. Okay? So that started, about the 27th or 28th of November, that particular piece. On December 12th, we received a form letter as a property owner from Kinder Morgan informing us that one of the primary reasons that led to Kinder Morgan's decision to adopt the New York Power Line alternative and the New Hampshire Power Line alternative for the project is that they will enable a very substantial portion of the proposed new pipeline construction to be adjacent to and parallel with existing utility corridors. The letter also states that in addition, the proposed route change will enable Kinder Morgan to avoid, parenthetically in certain cases, to minimize in other cases the crossing of Article 97 properties, which are very strict conservation issues and those sorts of things in the state of Massachusetts, and an area of critical environmental concerns, and areas of critical environmental concerns in Massachusetts. Okay? Those were the issues. And if you recall, when Tim and I were talking, Tim Tenhave, the chairman of the Conservation Commission, and I were talking about this last Thursday, we talked about the importance of the environmental issues with regard to any testimony or any information that we supplied to Kinder Morgan. And part of that reason is because of the impact that it has for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the process. On December 15, again, this was again discussed at the Conservation Commission meeting on December 8. December 18, the Town Council voted to formally request a special public meeting with Kinder Morgan in Merrimack. On January 2nd, 2015, Chairman Harrington gets notification via email that Lucas Meyer is available as the point of contact for any questions regarding the pipeline. On January the 5th, proposed gas pipeline project was discussed at the Conservation Commission meeting. On January 6th and 7th, the town manager communicated with Carrie Thurman from Senator Shaheen's office and requested information regarding the process that Kinder Morgan must go through with the FERC process. January 9, the town manager called Timothy Drew, administrator with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Site Evaluation Committee, excuse me, who stated that the Site Evaluation Committee had not received any information to begin their process yet. They will not begin, based on the briefing that I got in Milford a week later, their process does not begin until they receive the formal application that Kinder Morgan provides to FERC. And they haven't, at this point, they're in the pre-application process. So once they make because they have to submit the formal application with their request to the State Site Evaluation Committee. And they can't do that until they do that with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So there's going to be a dislocation here in the timing between the federal process and the state process because of the application requirements on each of those. On January 8th, the Town Council voted to send a letter to the federal delegation requesting their support and extending the public comment period for 90 days. Chairman Harrington sent an email request to council members to participate in the Amherst Consortium. Tom Mahon and Bill Boyd volunteered for that. We also, on the meeting of the 8th, we also sent a letter to FERC requesting the extension of the initial comment period. On January 8th through the 13th, the town manager spoke with Lucas Meyer 4 times to request dates for a public meeting in Merrimack. January 12th, the proposed gas pipeline is discussed at the Horse Hill Nature Preserve Subcommittee meeting. January 14th, congressional delegation sends letter to FERC requesting extension of the public comment period for New Hampshire. January 14th, Matt Abdifar, Manager of Public Affairs for Kinder Morgan, and Lucas Meyer, a private public affairs consultant hired by Kinder Morgan, stopped by the town manager's office to discuss a public meeting for Merrimack. In the email, Mr. Abdifar states that Kinder Morgan will be working with the town manager and the town council to schedule a town presentation in March. On the 14th, I attended the site evaluation process meeting. I'd sent an email on the 15th to the council outlining the pertinent information regarding that briefing that we got from Attorney Iacopino. On the 16th, Kinder Morgan sends a letter to FERC in response to the congressional delegation letter requesting that Kinder Morgan requested that the public process not be extended. That was in reaction to the petition that had been presented a few days after we sent our letter to FERC about the comment period. The petition, I believe it had about 1,900 signatures on it, was presented to the governor and sent to the congressional delegation and to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So they've reacted to that piece, but not to our letter yet. On January 20, Patty Quinn from Percheron Field Services, LLC, a land agent for Tennessee Gas Pipeline Company, dropped off 4 survey permission request forms to survey town-owned property, which was received by the town manager on 1/21. Okay, 19th was a holiday. Town manager was not in the office on the 20th. She picked them up on the 21st. On the 22nd, the Merrimack Citizens for Pipeline information presented to the council at the regular council meeting, and town council spent about an hour and a half taking public input. Okay. What you have in here, this is the map of the 4 parcels that they requested permission to survey. The largest parcel is the Horse Hill Nature Preserve. The next smaller parcel that would be to the right here, parcel number 2, that's the Gilmore Woods Memorial Forest. That abuts Greens Pond and flows into the area of the Aquifer Protection Zone and the wellhead protection area that MVD has 2 wells in that area. Are there 2 wells in that area or 1? 2 wells in that area. Okay. The parcel 3 is a small parcel on the corner next to the Maquette property, 40 Continental Boulevard. And the long, thin parcel that you see there is identified as parcel 4 is the sewer connection that runs from the wastewater treatment plant down to the Fidelity investment property. And that was established as a buffer. In addition to where the sewer line was run, it was established as a buffer for that between Continental Boulevard and Camp Sargent Road. So those are the 4 properties that they have requested permission to survey. Okay. Understand that if Kinder Morgan does get the certificate from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to proceed, the certificate of necessity, they will be able to survey those properties without our permission. Okay. January 26th, the proposed pipeline project was discussed at the Conservation Commission meeting. They had an extensive meeting. I see Gage Perry's here. And I was unable to attend because I was here for our final budget meeting. But the Conservation Commission took extensive action regarding retaining an environmentalist, someone that we had used, that the commission had used in the past, to assess the flora and fauna of the Horse Hill Nature Preserve and some other places, and they will be working with that individual to confirm or verify the information that they developed regarding endangered species and significantly impacted sensitive environmental areas that might be in that area. There's a blue heron rookery in there that's of concern. And when you get over to the Gilmore Woods, there's the aquifer protection area and the wellhead protection areas that are involved in those places. So whoever the individual that they're going to hire will take care of those issues. And if you watch the Conservation Commission meeting on replay, you can see the actions that they took and what they decided to do. Okay, it's a very extensive. I can assure you, Tim Tenhave is thorough. Okay, he was on this council for a couple of terms, and he is very astute. He is very knowledgeable, and he is exceptionally thorough. So they're not going to miss anything going through that process with him driving that. Okay, the expense for this will be taken out of the Conservation Commission's capital reserve funds that they have. Okay. So on the 26th, we also scheduled a work session regarding the Northeast Direct Pipeline project that's being held this evening. This is the meeting. And on January the 26th, as part of our budget process, we voted to appropriate in the next budget $25,000 for legal and consulting costs, in addition to the proposed funding authorized by the Conservation Commission and the Merrimack Village District to pursue their own interests in this matter. Okay, and that's let's see. If you go to the last page, Paul, these are the links. Has this been put up yet, or will it be? The links are already up. So the first one is the letter of support for extension of the comment period. The next one is the other public information materials that the federal, almost all the federal websites put up to provide information to the public in terms of their processes and their responsibilities and their authority. Okay, so it's a rather long email address, and as I said, it is on the Town of Merrimack website. Okay. So those are the things that we have been doing. There are probably a couple of dozen other phone calls and other inquiries that were made by town staff and various departments regarding other impacts and dealing with the issues that we're going to discuss this evening. Okay. So, are there any questions or comments from any of the council members? Bill?
Yeah, just a quick question from a jurisdictional perspective as it relates to the four parcels. Horse Hill's under the auspices of the Conservation Commission. Would it be their auspice to make a decision as to whether or not Horse Hill gets surveyed? Would it be the town council's? And how does that relate to the other three pieces of property in town in terms of jurisdiction?
The Horse Hill Nature Preserve is, I'm pretty sure, is under the Conservation Commission's auspices, as well as the Gilmore Forest.
So they would be making a decision as to whether or not they would allow surveys to go onto those properties, is that correct?
Yes.
So therefore, the other two would be under the council's jurisdiction. Is that my
Yeah.
understanding?
Yes.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, the other two are of minimal environmental
I agree.
concern. So anyway,
And just one other thing I would point out to the folks in attendance and watching on TV, the FERC website is horribly slow. So when you're clicking on links, just unfortunately, you're going to have to dedicate some time to downloading the documents. It took me about a half an hour to get the Citizen's Guide to fully come up for me on my computer, just to give you an idea of how cumbersome the website is. So,
the other cumbersome part of that website is that when you go to comment onto this website, you got to register. Okay. And I presume that once you've registered, it's not going to be as big of a problem as it was before, but there is a registration requirement in there. Okay.
and the other point, if they register for the email blast, the updated emails through FERC Online at FERC.gov, it goes directly to your email address. Every single document as it relates to docket 1422, you automatically get an email alert, and you're able to look at the actual document. So you'll get comments from everybody that's impacted by the proposed pipeline, plus you also get documentation that's submitted by Tennessee Gas, Kinder Morgan, or their attorneys, amongst other things. Thank you.
Okay. You can also ask the Site Evaluation Committee to be put on their procedural docket, and they will send you notifications when the application, once the application is filed, they will send you their timeline as to their process. And again, it's the same thing, okay? It'll come to you automatically. Okay. Lon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the Site Evaluation Committee and the request of Kinder Morgan at FERC, do I understand correctly that there is a difference in the force and effect one group or the other has? In other words, is FERC in control, or when their application if it is received and is given to Kinder Morgan, and the Environmental Services Site Evaluation Committee gets it, which of the two would we have the most force and effect with? Is there, and if that's a premature question, I apologize.
It is not. Gage, you out there someplace? Oh, there you are. Okay. If I screw this up, help me out, will you? What Attorney Iacopino said was that Kinder Morgan regularly discounts the impact of a state agency because under the Federal Natural Gas Act, okay, almost all other entities are preempted by the federal level. However, they do agree to go through the process. The question was asked, well, what if the state agency says no, will that carry any weight with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission? And I don't remember the exact words that he used, but I got the impression that that was strictly up to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission as to whether they accepted that information or not. Okay? So, you know, it's a process that the state of New Hampshire put in place to try and deal with this. Many other states have done the same thing. Their contention is all of this is preempted by the federal law and that they really don't have to agree to that. Okay? This is an administrative process. It's not a judicial process. So, in response to my direct question about that, there are no rules of evidence in this. Okay? Each body, the state body and the federal body, okay, are the sole arbiters of the weight of the evidence and the credibility of the witnesses. And the burden of proof is the least restrictive, which is, I keep forgetting it. I did it for 26 years, too. Just drew a blank. The burden of proof is 1 scintilla more that they'll accept the application based on the information they have in hand. Okay? So it's the least restrictive burden of proof. It's not clear and convincing evidence, which is a higher burden, and it's not beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? It's merely whether or not either one of the parties made the case that there's necessity or no necessity for this, and if in their sole judgment they have made the decision that it is necessitous or it is not necessitous, that's the standard that they're going to use. All right? That's at FERC and at the state agency. They both use basically the same set of rules with regard to that.
Thank you.
Okay? And probably, I will not call you at 2 in the morning if I remember in the legal term. That's right. Preponderance of the evidence. Thank you, Finley.
I've been whispering it, but
I didn't hear you. It's the preponderance, the burden of proof is the preponderance of the evidence, which is, you know, if it's just, in their estimation, just that much more convincing to them one way or the other, then that's how they can deal with it. This is an extensive hearing process that this has to go through. All right, and as I said, there's going to be a lot of hearings. The feds will probably come up here for some of theirs, but they'll probably make the decision in Washington. All right, and the state will probably do their hearings in Concord, but I'm not sure about that. They may do something else. I'm not sure how they work on that. We didn't ask. I don't think that question got asked. But again, you're dealing with two processes that are running in parallel, but they're just slightly out of sync. All right, so it's going to be real important to keep track of schedules and hearing dates and those sorts of things, and what will be accepted at one set of hearings as opposed to what will be considered in another set of hearings. Okay, Tom?
So just to try to get a better understanding, FERC is the department or the committee that's going to make any final decision, and they may or may not take into account what the State of New Hampshire's Site Evaluation Committee has to say. The reason that we need to keep track of both is because if the Site Evaluation Committee comes out positive or comes out against what we would like, that's not going to help us at all. So we need to get any influence that we're going to get into FERC by every method possible, and the Site Evaluation Committee is one of them, but it's not by any means a final determination. FERC is going to make that final determination. Does FERC report to anybody above them?
Probably whoever runs the energy department.
The Department of Energy or something to that
Yeah.
effect? Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
All right. Okay, now, another wrinkle in this whole process with regard to the state, okay? There is an individual in the Attorney General's office who is called the Counsel for the Public. And he may or may not be your friend, because he has got to consider the entire state and the impact of the proposal on the entire state, not to Merrimack or to Amherst or to Hollis or to anything else, okay? It's not like the consumer advocate at the PUC, okay? It's not the same thing. So there's these distinctions that are being made, and legal distinctions that are remaining in the statutes about the individuals that are involved in the process. Certainly you can contact the individual. His name is Peter Roth, and his phone number is 271-3658. But again, that process hasn't begun, and it can't begin at the state, at the Site Evaluation Commission level until they receive an application from Kinder Morgan, and that hasn't happened. So if you call them and start pinging them for stuff, they're going to tell you, they're going to pull the Sergeant Schultz routine. I know nothing, okay? Because there's no application in front of them. And until they have that application, that's what triggers the timetable, that's what triggers their action, and that's what triggers their whole process, okay? And I'm sorry, but what you want to ask for at the Site Evaluation Committee is to be placed on the service list. Contact the Site Evaluation Commission and ask to be placed on their service list. They only have a part-time administrative assistant, okay? So it may take you a little while to get confirmation or to get through on that, okay? Lon, you looking for something? Okay. Now that presentation, we put that on too, right?
Excuse me?
The Site Evaluation Committee presentation, did that get put on the website?
Yes.
Okay. So the information that was presented by Attorney Iacopino was put on the town website earlier this month. If you want to go take a look at the rules and what they're doing, okay? There's two levels that you have to deal with when you're dealing with both the federal level and the state level. One is the actual statute, what the law is, what it says, and then there are the specific rules. Okay, so you have to take both of those into consideration. The rules are technically interpretations of the statute, and they have the same force as the statute when they've been adopted. So they are run through the federal process, and they're adopted, and once they're adopted, that's the rules that they're required to follow. All right? Same at the state level. There's a legislative oversight body that reviews these things on a regular basis, and the rules for the site evaluation committee, the prefix for them is SITE. So if you go onto the state website and you look for, it says statutes and rules. You click on rules, you want to go down to SITE. They're alphabetically listed, and that will give you the rules for the site evaluation commission. Okay, their rules. If you want to look at the statute, it's RSA 162H, hotel, 162-H. And the SITE rules are the interpretation of the statute. Okay. Now, and I apologize. Chairman Harrington hasn't been here for the last several meetings. The reason is she's had surgery about 10 days ago. She is home. She is recovering. She said she's feeling better, and her recovery is going according to plan. Okay, so keep her in your thoughts and prayers. We do miss her. She's a very steady hand here, and she's had a lot of experience with this process because she went through it with the outlets. Okay, so a lot of what you've seen here is between a lot of things that we've done, and a lot of the policies that we've determined that we're going to use here are as a result of her counsel as to some of the things that she felt needed to be done in these kinds of processes. Okay. All right. So, what Eileen and I prepared is what I call potential council action items. And as I stated parenthetically, there's no particular order, and it's not exhaustive. Okay? This is for our consideration tonight as to what we want to do and how we want to proceed. And so, is there anything that you want to start at the top and work our way down?
Top to bottom.
Okay. First one here is continue to press Kinder Morgan for public meeting in Merrimack. I presume that's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
Okay. So, the action item on that is for the town manager and the chairman. Okay.
Yep.
I will be placing an action item on the February 12th agenda requesting the council to take no action regarding the request from Kinder Morgan to survey town-owned property until there's a Merrimack public meeting. Okay.
Clarify,
Yes.
the way that I read that, requesting the council to take no action means we're not going to do anything about it.
That's right. We're not going to authorize it. We're not going to deny it. Okay? And even though I've worded it this way, I couldn't come up with any elegant way of saying it does not mean that we are going to do that or we're not going to do that. Okay?
Okay.
All right? Don't have too many chips here, people, so we got to use what we got. And this might be one of them, and I doubt they'll even think about it. Okay? So, okay. The other thing that's suggested on here is to place the NED pipeline update on future council agendas. And most of the response that I've gotten from some of the council members that did reply to this was that this is a good idea.
My one suggestion would be to put it under old business. That's why it's at the top of the agenda in case if people do come to make a comment or two about the pipeline, that it's at the top of the agenda as opposed to being under new business and tucked down below.
No, it doesn't. We could. No, we can put that on there any place we want.
Okay.
So if we want to stick it up top, we can stick it up top. Okay? I mean, we control the agenda. We do have a format that we use, but we routinely adjust and alter that format. And in this instance, it would come somewhere before I would suggest that it come before we start dealing with new and old business.
And I would agree with that.
Okay? Or some other way of dealing with it. in an early and timely fashion.
Okay.
So it might be considered like an appointment with the council. It would
Almost.
just be
Yeah.
something, a regular,
It's like,
event, if you will.
we always have announcements on here.
right.
Okay? And between the council chair and the town manager, we do something like that, or we get the town manager's report. This could come in after that or before it. Okay? And deal with it in that fashion. Okay.
I think that's a great idea.
Last week, I asked the staff to put together a list of properties that directly abut the proposed pipeline route. They did give me a list that has about 67, it should have 68 properties. They forgot to put Pan Am Railway on here because the pipeline would be crossing the railroad, but I didn't see it on this list. But there's 67 properties and 68 properties and 56 owners involved in those properties. Okay, what I suggested here was to try and find those properties that might be impacted by what is known by any kind of scary name you can think of. Explosive zone, incineration zone, hazard zone, buffer zone, whatever you want to call it. Okay. The difficulty with that is that can run anywhere from 300 feet to 2,000 feet. So at this point, it's a moving target as to how wide that it could be. Okay. Okay. Any comment on that one?
I guess the comment that I would make is you have the Whittier Road properties adjacent in front of Merrimack Premium Outlets. You also have the properties along Fields Farm Road
Right.
that may not be direct abutters, but might be as a part of that particular zone. And I just would ask that consideration be given to the people to those neighborhoods that live over in that part of
Yeah,
the pipeline.
we're almost back to where we were with the outlets with the blasting.
Correct. It's the
Okay.
same concept.
It's almost the same thing.
Yep.
Okay. Again, this isn't going to be a perfect list. It's just to give an idea of what the area is that we will have to pay attention to and the issues that we might have to raise as we go forward in the regulatory process to deal with the issues that come up with these properties. Okay. The next item on here is to consider hiring a consultant to research community property value effects of recent pipeline installations. The town manager has suggested that we retain the services of Lauren, the town, from the town's assessing company to conduct that research. We didn't put anything in yet. Eileen?
I had a chance to speak to her today, and they actually have someone who is field of expertise is utilities assessments. So she felt that would be the person to deal with directly, somebody with expertise in that area.
Well, is it the expertise, the assessment of utilities, or the properties that abut them? Because we're looking at the properties that abut them, not the utilities themselves. And there's two distinctions there,
Okay.
okay? Because if you're going to assess, you know how when we set up the inventory of property, okay? Do we use our assessment for the utility properties, or do we use the state assessment for the utility properties?
Use our own.
Okay? So, Paul? Okay. Okay, so, so I don't know, what we would need to get clarified is that person's ability to do that research for us and make that determination as to the impact of something like this, a new utility issue coming through a particular area to properties.
The work that I had anticipated that this person would do, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be to assess the change in value from another community where a similar pipeline went through. So this person would probably be more in tuned to getting that information and having that information.
Okay.
So they wouldn't be evaluating the utilities, but they would
Right.
be soliciting information from other communities to get that information for us.
Okay. Now, would it be safe to say that this is more or less a survey? Because a lot of these people are going to say, oh, good. I can use this.
What it is going to be is gathering data from other communities. So before the pipeline went in, and hopefully it's not at that peak point where property values increased and decreased because of
The market.
the market.
Yeah.
But to look at a recent pipeline community and see what the values were and see what the values were then and are
Excuse
now.
me.
Just to get some sense from a professional standpoint to give us advice on the effects on value of properties literally that happened in another community.
Okay.
So,
Tom?
so I think it's important to understand that we're not trying to make an assessment of any individual property on your list
Right.
to show where it will go. And people aren't going to be able to say, okay, what did the town decide my property is going to be? This is going to be an effort to get a trend or a judgment as to what impact might happen. And I think that impact has to look at both the gas pipeline value as well as community values. We need to understand both sides of that equation. There was some discussion at our last meeting that the town council was kind of wringing their hands looking at incoming money because the gas pipeline would be taxed. And I presume it will be taxed, but I have no indication that it's going to be any significant amount of money. And even if it were, I don't think it would be allowed to impact our judgment on what would be best for the community. But we still need to understand both sides of that equation.
Right.
I'm hoping that person does look at the whole impacts.
No. Okay. Other questions or comments from the council? Can we get that on an agenda, or do we have to get that on an agenda? Okay. Yeah, because that'll be a specific expenditure. Okay. Evaluate impacts on the sewer lines. That should be that's an internal determination, right?
I have spoken to Jim Taylor over at the wastewater treatment plant, and he has somebody on staff, but he also is in touch with somebody who's a professional
Oh, that's right. You talked about the
consultant
engineering company.
Right,
that
Pierce.
can
Yeah.
give more information that he's worked with before. His again, being so early in the process, it's difficult for anybody in that area, the sewer line area, to take a look at the impacts of it because they don't have specific drawings. How deep is it going to be? Where is it going to be? What provisions are they going to have? So they don't have specific plans
Right.
to address that they normally would look at.
Right, yeah,
So-
because going under Route 3 is going to be a lot different than going under the railroad and out into the river.
So he is engaging this company to, so that we can secure their services when they're needed.
Okay. And that will be something that comes back to us once it's, if we decide to engage them?
I think all of it should.
Okay.
All of
It's-
these things should.
It's an expenditure. I mean,
Okay. Well, technically, once the budget's set, it's our responsibility and the manager's responsibility for that. And what she's saying is this ought to come back to us just because of the nature of what we're dealing with.
Right, and what I'm saying is I almost think since we do get one last bite at the apple within the budget process, that we ought to consider a line item appropriation under Jim Taylor's department, however you want to put it there, for whatever the council deems to be an appropriate expenditure for that type of work, even if it's just seed money.
Yeah.
Just a line to work with.
Well, yeah, and I understand that that's an enterprise fund.
I understand.
Okay, so that the ratepayers on the sewer system are the ones that are gonna, whatever their, whatever fees they're going to be paying for the sewer, it will be taken out of that,
Right.
out of that rate money. It won't be applied to the, won't be applied to the tax rate.
Trying to make it transparent so that people know that
Yeah.
they see where it's going.
Sure. All right. Next one is support Conservation Commission's effort to update data for environmental impacts on Horse Hill Nature Preserve and Gilmore Woods. Okay. I think we can safely say
That's an easy one, too.
that we definitely support that. As I said, there are subject experts in that area. They're very good. They're very thorough. And as we've seen in the past, when routes have been changed and projects have been altered or abandoned, a lot of it's been due to the environmental impacts that are involved. Okay. The other thing, the next one is to support the MVD's efforts to protect the wellhead protection zone and aquifer protection zones. And
If I might.
yes,
In anticipation of some interest in the Merrimack Village District's interest in this regard, I had asked the staff over at the MVD to put together a Tennessee gas pipeline chronology. They titled it, "It Sounds Like Somebody Copied Tom or the council's presentation tonight." I'm not gonna read it. There are about 32 items. We began our awareness of this project in April of 2014. And the superintendent and I and representatives from Underwood Engineering attended a meeting over in Hollis on April 7th. It was just it was April 21. April 7th was our initial awareness that something was happening. We've been involved with conversation, action in action, from Kinder Morgan ever since. At a point in August, we were told, "We're not interested in your property." The property that they were originally interested in was in Hollis.
Lon, can I get you just to point out, you're talking "we" as a member of the MVD Commission, not as a town council member, right?
Correct.
Just for the sake of the people that are
Thank
in
you
the
very
audience
much.
that maybe
I
not
appreciate
understand
you
that.
making that distinction. And the information that I'm going to present to the council comes to the council from the commission. They're aware, and that it's public knowledge. A suggestion was made earlier this evening that perhaps we can include this on the town's website. I would need to have the full MVD commission aware of that, and have asked that latitude for the immediate future, not to delay it. But at any rate, I think the town council should know we are very much aware of the project. We've had our requisite meetings, not in private as a commission with Kinder Morgan. No. We did not subvert the process. Originally in Hollis, we met with the superintendent, and one other commissioner met with a representative who kind of sort of pointed out a proposed route for a pipeline which was going right through the sanitary protection areas of both wells 7 and 8, and that was just dead on arrival at that point. You don't do that, and they understood that. everybody knows consequently something happened and Kinder Morgan decided to change the whole route. And at that point, they had informed us, you're not of interest. Suddenly we are, and the activity picks up from September through October, November, December. Monday's BOC meeting, and the action is outlined for the council. I would highlight at the December 26th BOC meeting, January 26th.
BOC, by the way, is Board of Commissioners.
I'm sorry, board, yeah. We, the MVD reordered their budget so that we included $5,000 in legal account and $10,000 in an engineering / consultant account dedicated specifically for our efforts to protect the wellhead protection areas and wells 2 and 3. We have been in contact with the Conservation Commission, Tim Tenhave. We have assured him that we stand shoulder to shoulder with him. He had asked if we were interested in using his consulting and surveying outfit in terms of environmental issues on some of our properties that abut. I understand this afternoon that agreement was reached between the superintendent and Tim, and we certainly are in favor of that. But anyway, there's also a map that outlines for the council the wellhead protection area, which is when you get it, you'll notice that there's a kind of a discoloration, irregular throughout the map. That is what MVD states and is on record with DES as our wellhead protection area. And you can see very clearly that the proposed route interdicts that as it goes. So that's just for the edification of the council at this point.
Thank you, Lon.
You're very welcome.
Okay, next item on the list is the duplicate. I was doing a cut and paste to the order, and I took it out. Rather than cut it and then remove it somewhere in the electrons, I usually do it on the page and then go back and eliminate it after I've made the change. So anyway, that's a duplicate. The next one is request from Kinder Morgan, a list of abutters notified of the project, and request for permission to survey. I think that would be something that we could task the town manager with doing to start that process.
So I'd like to understand that. You're saying we should ask Kinder Morgan to provide us, the
With
town,
their list.
with their list that they're using to contact people.
Right.
Just so we know who they're contacting.
Yeah, and then we can match it up against our list.
Good idea.
Okay. And then as a double check, work with property owners to develop a list who has been notified of the project request for surveys. So it's sort of a built-in redundancy.
So we want a list with 3 different check marks by each name. That
Correct,
shows that we
yes.
have them, Kinder Morgan has them, and they actually received something.
Right. So at some point, we'll work something out to request that information from the whoever received those items. Okay. The other thing on here is to maintain contacts with FERC and the New Hampshire Congressional Delegation. We have been more in contact with the New Hampshire delegation than we have with FERC. But again, it's something that Eileen's been working on and taking care of that particular process. Okay. Next one is consult with PSNH regarding where they are in the process with Kinder Morgan and the PUC. Eileen, you made a call to Northeast Utilities about that?
I did, and I spoke to a vice president, and I would prefer not to say what, I can tell you what he said with the disclaimer that it wasn't his area of expertise. So he said he is in the distribution section. This had to do with the transmission section. But he was a vice president, and he said he had experience with the FERC process and the PUC in a project that occurred about 10 years ago that came into New Hampshire through Newington and went back out into Maine. And his experience as it related to the PUC was that the PUC did not get involved in negotiating with with the utility. So, for instance, in this case, the PUC doesn't go in and engage in negotiations with them to allow the pipeline to exist under their transmission lines or not. They have no say in it. So that was his experience 10 years ago. And then the other thing was I asked him if they had any input into where any of the concerns, any input as far as FERC was concerned as it related to it being located along their pipelines, and they said no. When FERC decides it's going in, and you will make it work. And if you have to move your transmission lines, you move your transmission lines. So again, I'm expecting a call from the proper department, which is the transmissions department, within the next few days to confirm and to see if anything has changed since that experience that he had 10 years ago.
Okay, thank you. And the last one is the consultant share information with the large companies on the route. This is Anheuser-Busch InBev, Elbit Systems, the Premium Outlets, Fidelity, Pan Am Railways. We've checked with PSNH, and the other is Penachuk. Because at one time they were talking about an intake over AB's land into the river. And I'm never sure whether that ever got done or not.
I am not either. It hasn't been on our radar as such.
Yeah. It was something they were contemplating when they were building their new treatment plant. I don't know, 15 years ago maybe. And I don't know whether there's any, if they ever did it or not. We got involved with it with the village district at the time.
At a point,
Nelson,
I
do you know
believe-
anything about that? If you would.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that they did in fact build that intake and that it was in the works.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that that intake has been built. It was built, I believe, on Anheuser-Busch's property with a proper easement from them, and it does supply additional water to the Penachuk in times of low flow in the Penachuk Brook itself. So it's been done,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there might be some impact there depending on the placement of the pipeline. I think
Yeah,
now-
I had started to say that was my understanding, that they do indeed have a intake pipe at the, somewhere on the Budweiser, or in the Budweiser zone of the river. Because we had explored looking at the river, I want to say 15 years ago, and at that point, we were well aware that they were ahead of us. Didn't preclude us, but there was that intake.
Yeah, I remember Lenny Worcester coming into the Budget Committee and talking about that. Okay. That was a long time ago. All right, gentlemen. Anything else? Bill?
Back during our budget deliberations, I talked about setting aside monies for the legal process, specifically the intervenor process with FERC. And I certainly would like to see at our next meeting an agenda item where we would take some steps regarding our intent, whether we're going to have an attorney represent us at the intervenor level, either as the town of Merrimack or as a part of a consortium with other communities. I certainly think it would be prudent to get the early jump on that process, so that, because there are, the energy law is very, very specific, and as I alluded to last Monday, arcane.
Arcane,
Like I said, testifying before FERC is like speaking Sanskrit. It's an arcane.
That's a written language.
It's a written. Well, you know what I'm saying. It's arcane. There's a certain process, and you need to know how the process works. And having seen Joel Mayola's name with McLean Government Solutions, that immediately takes McLean Graph out of the equation. The only other two in town that come to mind would be Bernstein, Schur, Divine Millimet, that have energy attorneys. And I'm just saying we need to get the early start, because we don't know whether or not these law firms have conflicts of any way, whether indirectly with some of the contractors that have been hired by Kinder Morgan or with Kinder Morgan directly. So I would really like to get that ball going.
I would suggest that we consult with our counsel to see if he can provide us with somebody who can explain the intervenor process to us. Because the way I read it, when I went on FERC's site, it was very specific about the issues, and it looked like it didn't allow for a consortium to do it. Now, I'm not saying that it can't. I'm just saying that the way it was worded and the way it was put on the page, to me, I would like to have, I think it would be in our best interest to have somebody come in and say, this is what it means and this is how it works. I'm not discounting what you're saying.
No, I understand.
Or the possibility of setting that aside. It's just that I looked at that and I said, because where's your appeal at the intervenor level? If you disagree with the determination, your appeal is to Federal District Court.
District Court, correct.
Okay.
I just think it's very important that
I agree that
we have a presence, and
Right.
to make sure that that the town's interest as it relates to this project is represented at that particular level, and represented passionately with bias to our community. And I think the quicker we get information as to how that process best works for us, I think it will give us the type of direction as a council which direction we need to pursue. So is it prudent to meet with Matt or his proxy at some particular point within the next couple of months?
Yes.
Okay.
What? Lon?
I would suggest sooner than the next couple of months.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lon.
Okay. Any other suggestions?
So we're going to continue to keep up the website information that we have.
Right.
We're going to continue to post anything that comes in, legal document-wise, official documents and whatnot,
Yes.
to maintain our transparency and openness in this whole process.
Yes.
Just confirming all that, making sure that's
The other thing
Clear.
that I see happening is this isn't closed. This is not a closed list.
right.
Because as we go through this process and as we have those regular updates, we are going to identify
Additional
identify
actions
other
and
issues that we're
activities.
going to have to deal with.
Yeah, and that's why we want to put it on the agenda on a
Right.
regular basis, so that
Yeah.
it shows up every week, every meeting. I agree, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Now, there have been contact by several different towns or other consortiums, if you will, for representation. Do we want to talk at all about where we're going with that? I think the town of Amherst is trying to put together a group, or
You sent a,
You guys are, you and Bill Boyd are representatives to that.
I think our names got sent to them. Like they must have, because I got a, Mr. DeAngelis, contact, came up and introduced himself in Milford. But they haven't called any meetings yet.
Hasn't there been one or two other towns also
Brookline.
that are, Brookline is trying to put something together?
There's a Brookline group with 5 or 6 other towns, and I spoke to the town manager of Brookline today and asked him why don't they please just join the groups together, because it would be an awful lot more effective. And he said that he was going to try and get the groups together, but they were meeting, what he said was that they were meeting prior because they wanted to take actions and wanted to share information before Amherst had their meetings, because they haven't had any yet. So it looks like they're going to join together. Sometimes people want to have their own thing, but I'm urging them to combine.
And the other one is the NRPC, National
NRPC.
Regional Planning Commission, is also putting a working group together. And they've asked for a representative, and Nancy let us know that she would, if there's anybody that's interested, she would forward that name along to them. By the 6th of February, I guess, was the date asked by the NRPC, which is, what, a week from Friday? Okay.
And their effort is to try and get together representatives from each of the towns that they represent and do some research and studying and trying to pull this information together. So there's a lot of people that are getting after all the same information,
Yeah.
and just trying to make sure that it's shared throughout all of the 13 or
Right.
18 communities that NRPC.
And they have put together a GIS overlay of the pipeline route by town. So that already exists. It's available on their website. And I was, yeah,
We also have a link to that on our section of the town's website that deals with the pipeline. I was originally spoke to our GIS expert in the DPW department about plotting it himself, and he said that it would cost a fortune to plot it himself, and that the one that NRPC, who we are a member of, has already done that, and you can, it's to such detail that you can go neighborhood by neighborhood and expand and expand to get a great deal of detail. So as I said, there's a link on our website in our section to the NRPC site where that map is.
does the council wish, Glenn?
I appreciate the discussion about other groups, and I understand exactly that the more minds and the more ideas, the better. However, I would not want to diminish our own good effort and counsel and advice to ourselves in terms of Merrimack's efforts. Thank you.
Well, Dan?
And just as everybody probably knows, the 80-mile track, 72 miles owned by public service, the 12 miles roughly of private land, half of it is ours. So we're the biggest player. So there are many towns that are in it for a mile or two. It is our town that has over 5 miles of the 12 miles necessary in private hands.
Okay. Does the council wish to take any further action at this time, or any other suggestions, any other issues? Okay. Could I have the sign-in sheets, please? Sure. All right. Next item is comments from the press. Anybody from the press wish to comment, or are they even in attendance? They'll get the video.
Flagging anything, so.
They'll get the video later. Okay. Comments from the public. Now, this is just a comment period. It's usually limited to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 16 people that signed this, and there's 8 of them who said that they maybe want to speak. And there 7 said maybe, only 1 yes. Okay? So there's a lot more than 16 people in the room. I'm going to take these first. Again, try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. It's usually a discussion of what we talked about at this particular meeting. Okay? And then once I get through the list, if there's anyone else that wishes to chime in, I will certainly recognize you to do that, okay? We ask you, again, to keep your comments brief, on point, and would appreciate brevity, especially if you're going to try to reiterate support for somebody else's position, okay? And please, courtesy would be most helpful while we go through this process. Okay? So I'll start off with Michelle Watson. Julie O'Brien. Thank you. Whoa. I guess I should have put on here, please print.
Wally O'Brien.
What's that?
Wally O'Brien? Wally, I thought.
I don't know.
Walter O'Brien?
62 Camp Sargent Road. How's that? That's what I can read.
I thought you were up one time. Donahue, Mr. Donahue.
Mr. Donahue?
I don't think he was.
Okay.
If he comes.
Kathy Pitton? You're welcome. Thank you. Oh, boy. Let me hope that I don't butcher this. Stacy Megalitis. Please come up to the microphone or sit down here at the table. Please identify yourself by name and address.
Hi, my name is Stacy Megalitis. I live at H Scotch Pine Lane in Merrimack. I've lived in Merrimack for 18 years now, and one of the reasons I moved to Merrimack from Massachusetts is because of the safety provided to my family. Safety is #1 priority in my life, and I'm very opposed to the Kinder Morgan pipeline. #1 reason, I feel it's unsafe to many of our residents. I'm looking around the room here, and I see so many of my friends who live in the incineration zone. It's not in my backyard at this point, but it is in theirs. And I'm urging and begging you here to strongly consider our residents who live here for the safety of this town. Kinder Morgan is a huge company. They stand to make millions off of using Merrimack for their pipeline, using our residents in their backyards. Kinder Morgan was associated with an Enron executive. One of them is now in jail. The other should be, but is with Kinder Morgan at this time. This company is not a company that has integrity. I beg you to do your research. Find out all the reasons why Kinder Morgan does not have integrity. There's been many explosions with Kinder Morgan's pipelines as recently in the last couple of months, and these pipelines were just built 1 year ago. Safety is not their #1 priority. Making the millions and the corporate America, money is their #1 priority. They don't live here. The Kinder Morgan executives do not live in Merrimack. It's not in their backyard. They stand to make a lot of money. The Merrimack residents, there could be explosions. Their houses could get burned down. We could see our own residents die. I know that life can change in an instant. 10 years ago, my father died in a car accident. Just in an instant. Look around the room. I see many people in this room that I love. I spend time at their houses in the incineration zone. I don't want us to lose any of these residents. Please, I urge you, consider the residents of Merrimack. Consider all of us. And do due diligence. Because I do not believe the money that this town could make could replace the loss of lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay Lenartz. It's okay. And make sure that green light's on there. And pull the microphone close to you, please.
Here we go. Clay Lenartz, 2 Haynes Terrace in Merrimack. Couple of points. You made a comment that this is a 3-year process. Kinder Morgan has already said that they plan to have gas flowing through that pipeline 2007. This decision is going to be made in months, maybe a year. Construction, whatnot, will last to 2017. Decision, you don't have a whole lot of time. Her comment about Rich Kinder, he was mentored by Ken Lay, 1990 to 1996, formed Kinder Morgan with William V. Morgan in 1997, who was also mentored by Ken Lay. We know what happened to all of that in 2001. By your notes, if I'm right, you've requested a public meeting 6+ times, and they're saying, yeah, it'll be sometime in March. I'm guessing, especially since they're pushing back real hard about not extending the comment period, I'm guessing March 19th is probably the day they're going to pick, the day after you can respond. I'm concerned, you know, the safety, a lot of people are going to address that issue. I'm concerned about what's in it for Merrimack. You guys are talking about money coming and going. It sounds more like you're running a business than running the town for the citizens, but that comment aside, you're looking at negligible taxes being paid by Kinder Morgan. This is an infrastructure project. When it depreciates, even if they do pay a bunch of money up front, that's going to go away. The gas flowing through that pipeline isn't. They're talking about the effect it's going to run through people's backyards. I've seen numbers like a gas pipeline running through an industrial property drops the value by 50%. Would you really buy a house with a gas pipeline in the backyard? Probably not. Those poor people are going to have the value of their house drop to, for all practical purposes, 0. So you're going to have a drop in the value of the property. You're going to have Kinder Morgan paying next to nothing. And like I said, if it's not now, 10 years from now, it'll be next to nothing. You're going to have to raise the tax rate. So the people that lose the value on their property are getting screwed because they're getting worthless houses, and everybody else in town is getting screwed because they're going to have to pay the taxes to make up for it. I don't think that's right. I think you need to act in the best interest of the citizens of Merrimack. I also think that you need to make it clear to Kinder Morgan that you either talk to us, give us time, let us deal with this in a rational fashion, or we're going to fight you tooth and nail. I think if they realize that there's going to be planned resistance, maybe they'll deal with it in a more rational fashion. I think that it needs to be made clear to the citizens of Merrimack that if they don't want to play nice, we're going to have to not play nice. And specifically, I think we have to force them to take our land by eminent domain as opposed to signing a deal. And for the people that are involved, taking it by eminent domain relieves you of any responsibility if it does blow up. You sign something, you could be held liable. I think there's a lot of issues that you guys need to address other than just the money. I'm done.
Gina Rosati.
Hi, Gina Rosati from 15 Dunbarton Drive. I have a question about, we have this proposed map with the proposed line, but in the event that it can't go through Horse Hill because of conservation land or wellheads or whatever, are there other planned areas that have been discussed?
That's their plan. They would have to redo the plan, amend it, whatever you want to talk about, to try and get around that particular issue.
Because I've heard a couple of different routes that have been discussed. Have they mentioned anything to you or sent any word to you?
I would sure as heck like to know what those other routes were, because I haven't seen anything.
Okay. So
I'm not saying they don't exist or there's some speculation out there.
okay, so this is not a firm route. This is something that can change. So in other words, it could potentially affect not just the 56 homeowners now. It could affect everybody in Merrimack.
Well, probably not everybody in Merrimack.
Well, but people that don't think that it concerns them right now. The route could change, and other people could be affected.
I can't speculate on that, okay? I think it probably could change.
So it could go north. It could go.
It could go south. It could go around Horse Hill. It could go
Okay,
around
so it's not
Gilmore
just
Woods.
these 60 homeowners. There are other people that might want to consider getting involved.
Well, that's up to them, okay? But right now, this is the plan that's been submitted to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That's the plan we're going to deal with. We start dealing on speculation as to which way it's going to jump one way or the other, if it's going to jump one way or the other. We're going to be spending enormous amounts of time and money on something that may not happen.
True. I'm just
Okay.
curious if you had heard about any other route.
I
Okay.
have not heard of any other route.
Okay. Thank you.
Donald Miner?
How you doing? Don Miner, 82 Peaslee Road. First, I'd like to say thank you for at least acknowledging that there's a problem and you guys are doing something about it. My understanding from reading the paperwork I've got from Kinder Morgan in relation to survey is if you ignore the problem or if you don't act, they take that as a yes, and they will survey. So a no action is an acceptance. That's in their paperwork. I apologize I didn't bring it with me. Didn't know that this was on the agenda, or I would have. So I would implore you to look in your paperwork. So a no action means a yes in their eyes. Is Lucas or Matt here? Because I could verify that. Lucas Meyer? Okay.
I don't know.
Kinder Morgan guys, so I
Yeah, I
figured
know.
they would be here. Another thing, in regards to survey, I actually had I can't remember the woman's name, from Kinder Morgan, who's knocking on doors for survey, actually showed up at my house on Friday, the day after last week's meeting, knowing exactly who I am. Number one, I'm not on my deed on my house. I'm not on my mortgage. It's my wife's, okay? So they pay attention to these meetings. She gave me a big song and dance, and I asked her, don't want to talk about it. Today, ironically, I have not given permission one way or the other on survey until this afternoon, when about 2:25 p.m. there was a survey crew in the snowbanks on my front yard. I've then since called her to say what's going on. I gave her half an hour to get back to me, or I was calling the Merrimack Police Department. I called the Merrimack Police this afternoon, or this evening around 6 o'clock, spoke to an Erica at dispatch, and she said that at that point in time, there was nothing in the log saying that anybody called asking for notifying in the town that there was a survey crew available or in town. Though I did speak to the woman at Kinder Morgan, or whatever subsidiary she's from. She got back to me immediately, and she said that they were supposed to be surveying in Amherst. I live at 82 Peaslee Road. I don't want to guess on how far. It's a fair distance from the town line in Amherst, I would imagine. So they may want to consider looking at their survey crew. They had to cross a river to get to my house. They're a little bit off the mark. Okay, so you might want to take that in mind if they're going to kind of do what they want to do. Especially, I guess this is for an aerial survey. She's now got my definitive, you're not surveying my property. They can't play by the rules already. This is the second time now with me, so other people should beware. And Larry, I'm not happy. I'm very sick. I showed up tonight to express this about the survey because I'm very pissed off. Excuse my expression. But I would caution the Merrimack Council to not let the survey, you shouldn't let them survey the town property and use that as a little bit of leverage to get a meeting. We are the biggest town on the route. We have the most mileage, I'm assuming, as Mr. Dwyer pointed out. You have more leverage than you think at this point in time because the comment period is what's going to expire, and that's where you have the most power. If you let this go, you're not going to have as much as you seem to think you will. So I know you guys are working on it. That's all I wanted you to do. That's all my questions were the last time. Didn't seem like you were doing much with it. Now it seems like you're doing something. Thank you very much.
Okay, that completes the list of those who indicated a desire to speak, possibly. Is there anyone else that would like? Nelson? No.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman Mayon and members of the council. I missed the part where it said to sign yes, I think, over there on the...
We're good.
I'm here today representing the Souhegan River Local Advisory, the Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee. The local advisory committees for the Lower Merrimack River and the Souhegan River are charged by the state of New Hampshire with responsibility for overseeing the management and protection of designated river sections in southern New Hampshire. In that regard, we note with satisfaction, as reported in the PHMSA, the nationwide incidence of fatalities resulting from gas transmission pipeline ruptures when normalized per mile of installed pipe has steadily declined in recent years. However, the data for significant gas line problems occurring at river crossings is not available. The prospective installation of this gas pipeline under our protected New Hampshire rivers raises some specific questions. We ask for further information and details on the method of installation of the pipeline under our protected rivers and their tributaries, including methods of boring, lubricants used, and chemicals used, and where else these methods might have been used, and what were the results. What has been the history of significant gas transmission line accidents associated with river crossings in recent years? And have there been any in New Hampshire? And how many natural gas transmission lines already cross under designated protected rivers, and where are they? Have there been any problems in the last 2 decades? And again, any in New Hampshire? The threat of scouring on pipes buried under rivers has been well documented, and minimum burial depths specified, along with the requirement for monitoring and operating procedures that would shut down pipelines during periods of high river flow that could threaten pipelines through scouring. To what extent does Kinder Morgan intend to exceed the minimum burial depth specified to ensure the intended burial depth is maintained over time and establish continual monitoring and contingency shutdown capability and procedures during periods of high flow? And what special actions does Kinder Morgan propose to take to ensure the safety of these protected rivers should this project proceed? We respectfully request, Mr. Chairman, that these questions be forwarded to Kinder Morgan and your discussions with them, and that answers be received that will give some assurance to the town and those river committees that our rivers are being protected, as well as all the other concerns raised today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Yes.
Good morning. Thank you. For the record, my name is Dick Barry. I'm one of your state reps. There's just a couple of, is it on? Is that better? I'm sorry. Thanks.
Great.
For the record, I'm Dick Barry. I'm one of your state reps. There's another alphabet soup that you ought to be paying attention to. It's called ISO. ISO New England is a group that manages and controls our energy flow. And the reason I mention them is that they have a designation called critical for certain infrastructure developments such as this. And what that is important for is eminent domain. If and when, and I'm pretty certain that this project has to go before the state site evaluation committee. And if ISO has not designated this project as critical to the infrastructure, then there's I'll say 99% chance that they can't use eminent domain when they're trying to cite it. And we can talk about that some more if you need to. But one thing I want to follow up with is you folks have written to your congressional delegation, as have we up in the State House, the reps and the senator, and what we've asked for is a delay in the requirement for public hearing or for public comment. Have you already sent in public comment? Have you already sent in minutes of all of these meetings to them and saying, here in advance, just in case, here is the comments that we're getting. They may not be official in terms of being in front of you folks, but have you done that yet? When do you plan to do it? Why are you waiting?
Something will be sent to them. We haven't pulled our materials together yet. Some of them we have, not everything.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Ma'am?
Junie Pierce. I would like to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, and that's specifically the wildlife in Merrimack and the animals at Horse Hill, who have no say in it, but whose lives would be impacted forever. That's all.
Thank you. You may.
Kathleen Rose, 83 Peasley Road. I'm not in favor of the pipeline.
Can you check to make sure that's on? Hit the button and see if it comes up brighter.
Yep. I'm not in favor of the pipeline. I don't think it's a service to Merrimack, New Hampshire. The gas pipeline is very limited, Nashua, Concord corridor. And I don't think any of the utility gas line companies have any plans to extend beyond Milford into east and western part of the state. Most of the gas is going to be sold, liquefied and sold, and what I've read states that only 30% will be used in the New England area. So just to reiterate, Kinder Morgan stands to gain a huge monetary advantage at our expense. We don't seem to have the same pull as Massachusetts, but hopefully with a consortium of communities and with help from the State House, we can sort of push back a little bit and see if we can stop this. I mean, if we're looking at a negative energy flow, you know, we have the pipeline from the frack gas in Pennsylvania, which will be going through this line. We have a potential for clean energy with the Northern Pass, although I understand going through the White Mountains. But at least the Northern Pass, the energy is hydroelectric. It'll go right into the grid, and it will service all of New Hampshire, parts of Vermont, parts of Maine, parts of Massachusetts. That's clean energy. And I really don't have a problem with sending money to Canada based on the environmental issues involved. My house at 83 Peasley Road is one of the oldest in town, and my barn is right on the power line. And I actually have a public service easement to use part of that land for agricultural purposes. From the corner of my barn to the center line of the power lines down by the two ponds, if you're familiar. That concerns me. If they blast my barn on a stone foundation, isn't going to make it. So I would hope that the town takes a proactive resistance stance to this pipeline. I'm glad that you had this meeting. I watched a rerun of the meeting the other night. And I think the mood was somewhat contentious, but I think, you know, with your appearance here today and the material that you've provided, I think, you know, most people should be on board that the town is actually trying to do something for us. The one thing I do have a problem with, however, is dissemination of information. If I did not watch the rerun the other night, I would not have known to get on the website and see if anything new had been posted. And I actually looked yesterday, and I said, oh, my God, there's a meeting scheduled. I think a lot of people in town would be interested in the proceedings concerning the pipeline, but they just don't have the information. A lot of people aren't going to check on the website every day. One person the other night talked about newspapers and the lack of information in newspapers. And I know it's budget season, and in the past, I know the town has sent out information regarding the budget to the residents and taxpayers, especially during town meeting time, you know, when people get some information about the articles that they'll be voting on at the meeting. I would hope that the town, or I would hope that you would consider sending out a notice to all residents, to all taxpayers, just one sheet, one postcard, just letting them know that this is an action that's proposed by Kinder Morgan. And whether or not they get involved at that point is up to them. But I think people just don't know. I spoke with someone at work the other day, and I said, well, do you know about the pipeline that's proposed for southern New Hampshire? And she said, oh, the Keystone Pipeline? And I work at a library, a college library, where everyone's searching for information all over the place, and no one knew about it. And I actually got on the Milford, New Hampshire website, and they had a PowerPoint presentation that's a PDF. And I guess the power line is supposed to go through 41 acres on Federal Hill Road, and all of those residents have part of a conservation easement. It's a big entanglement. So I thought that PDF file was really informational, even more so than what was on the Amherst website. So I think people just need to know, and people are unaware until you bring it to their attention. And I think the more support that we have, either for or against this project, it's the best thing that we could hope for. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Elizabeth Grunwald. I have lived at 15 Coda Road for the majority of my life since I was about 2 years old. And I lived in Merrimack since I was a couple weeks old. My understanding of everything that I've heard here and what I've read is that regardless of what stance the town takes on the pipeline, that if the federal government or FERC says that the pipeline needs to go in, it goes in. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a law on the town books that protects us from a foreign entity, corporate entity, coming in and overriding the consent of the town?
No,
And what is the process to do that?
it would have no weight. We're there is a process. It would require either an action by the council or a petition to the council, or a petition for a meeting, a town meeting.
Okay.
Not a town meeting per se, but a meeting where the issue would be considered and voted on.
Okay. And
Sorry, guys.
why would it not have weight?
Because it's superseded by federal law. We're entities, local governments are entities of the state, okay? We live and die by what the state tells us we can and can't do, all right? And the federal government can preempt and supersede state action and local action as long as there's no violation of issues of the Constitution. So the is it the Natural Gas Act, I think it is?
Yep.
Is the controlling statute here, and the Congress passed this, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago, and it's the controlling they haven't delegated the authority to do this to the states, and what they haven't delegated to the authority to the states to do, the federal government retains that authority, and in this case, they retain the authority to deal with the placement of these kinds of public utilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Anyone else wish to speak to this evening? Seeing no one, I want to thank you all very much for taking the time to come out this evening. Please drive safely on your way home. Roads might be a little weird, we will be dealing with this on a regular basis. You can check the website. You certainly can email us or call us with your concerns, or you can submit them to the email address that we gave you at the beginning of the meeting. Pardon?
Comments from the council.
Yes, thank you. Gentlemen, any comments? Tom?
Yeah, there's been some discussion about monies and concerns of it's almost as if we thought the council was selling us out or something like that. And if that came or reflected based on my comments earlier, I wanted to state for the record that I've been sitting on the planning board most of my time on the council. And one of the things that we do on the planning board is evaluate projects that come before us that want to go into town. We would not, on the planning board, evaluate this project because it is preempted by state and federal law. They don't give a whit about this town's planning board. But as a planning board rep, we look at projects extensively and from all sides. And it's important that we look at the pros and cons, the pluses and minuses, and then we have to look at the negative impacts on your property, and those are the things that we care about significantly. We also have to look at what other impacts might happen to town, and if that happens to be a tax income because of Kinder Morgan having infrastructure in our town, that's part of the process, and that's what I was alluding to. It's part of the process. You have to know the entire process. I was not trying to make any suggestion that this council or myself or our town manager or staff are looking at this project as if it's going to bring money into our coffers and fill up our bank accounts. I don't believe that will happen. But even if it were to do so, we would have to evaluate all sides of the project just so that we understand what it is that we're dealing with. And so while I understand it's very personal to a lot of people, it's very personal to me because I'm not terribly far away from the proposed route. It is important that we be rational and we look at the entire process. And I think the other thing that's important that's been brought out multiple times by folks is the federal government is going to be looking at this from an impact perspective, not on what personal people want or care about, but on what impact it has on the environment and the overall region, and not necessarily on whether the town of Merrimack wants it to come through the town of Merrimack or not. They could care less. So we have to find out why it should or shouldn't go through the town of Merrimack and make that a clear presentation to the committees that are making those presentations. Thank you.
Other members? Dan?
To answer some of the people who made some comments about the route being changed, but to piggyback on Tom first, everybody probably now realizes who the biggest benefactor of tax money or any fees is Public Service of New Hampshire. They're the ones who are really the biggest winner financially in this thing, because knowing that the corridor is 72 miles belongs to them. That being said, there isn't a Plan C in their plans. They had the Plan A was in Massachusetts, Plan B is in the southern New Hampshire. When the lady suggested, was there any other routes, the answer, as far as we've known, or I'll speak for myself, that I've known and looked into, there is no other route. However, this is what ties into my next comment. You should not look at the surveying crew as being your enemy. Getting to sign off on a survey and can I come on your property, can I survey your land, is completely different from, will you give me permission and here's a check for an easement money to go through your property. There's just two steps. They're asking you to survey your land. Why is it good for you? It's good for you to see that barn, that pond. What you see on the map is the GIS map. It shows the route, and everyone gets scared, and you should, to a certain point where you say, that's in my backyard. But it's the nitty-gritty, it's the detail, it's the surveyors on the ground that will then see the pond, will then survey the ledge. That's when the opportunity arises, when the surveys are there and you get to say, hey, there's my well, hey, there's my barn. By fighting them, that's your right, and you can. But I'm trying to get you to see it another way, is that the survey is there to witness your dilemma. That's when the survey moves a line, because they see rock ledge, they see a pond, they see your well. That's when whether it's dozens of feet or hundreds of feet within their zone of their trench of what they're trying to accomplish, that's when things can get moved. So when the woman's saying could it go around something, could it go under? Yes, that's why the surveyors are there. But the surveying people, by their very nature, aren't even, and this may sound hard to believe, that they're in the pocket of Kinder Morgan. That's not true. They have to pass all their environmental concerns. They're private companies. They get hired by a big company, but there's no quid pro quo going on about them doing the work for them. They're there with their boots on the ground, surveying the land. I know many of you in this room want us to automatically say, no, don't come on Horsetail Nature Preserve. That, I'm not convinced at this point, is the end game we might have. If Kinder Morgan continues to ignore us, maybe just out of spite, yeah, we will fight if we don't get any cooperation. But the fact that just to deny them to go to Horsetail to survey, where they may find 4 miles of the hardest ledge in blasting, and they may seek somewhere else or seek another zone. So from where I'm looking at, I would vote today if I was a homeowner in that area. I would want a surveyor to come on my land so I can have my say and show that surveyor where my concerns lie. I guess that's it.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to make reference to the open houses that were rescheduled?
Yeah, we got a list was issued, I think, today regarding the open houses. The one that was scheduled for Tuesday night in Milford was canceled, and it has been rescheduled for February 24th. There's another one in Hudson on February 19, and another one in Londonderry on February 18. Now, this is not a public hearing or a public meeting, okay? This is essentially a craft fair.
Trade show.
Okay? A trade show, whatever you want to call it, where all the guys come out. Nelson was talking about what are they using for slurry and what are they using for lubricants and stuff like that. Whoever doing their drilling is supposed to be there to answer those questions. Okay? So those kinds of technical questions are going to be there. All right? So, you know, and that's what they're required to do as part of this process that's dictated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. All right? So if you're going to go there, what you're going to do is you're going to talk to the guy who's going to be doing the blasting. You're going to talk to the guy who's going to be doing the drilling. You're going to be talking to the guy who's going to be running the tractor that lays the pipe in the hole, or the guy that's digging the hole to put it in, or the welder, or the x-ray company that's going to be x-raying the welds. Okay, those sorts of things. That's what that's all about. So that if you have questions about those technical issues and the environmental impact of that work, okay, what are they going to do about the runoff? What are they going to do about you know, those sorts of things? You know, those are the places where you could ask them, what are you going to do? How are you going to deal with that? What's this particular issue? All right. And that's what that's all about. What we're hoping to get is a public meeting. And we've asked them to send people here to talk about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And allow you the opportunity, politely I hope, diplomatically, if that's warranted, to ask them questions. Right? Because right now, our experience with their flax, if you will, has been horrible. Absolutely horrible. They don't know the first thing about what's going on and have not indicated any knowledge of that to us at all when we've been dealing with them. Okay? So, you know, hopefully that process will, I'm sure they will see this video. And because it's going to be online in a day or two, and they'll undoubtedly download it, and names will be noted. Okay, so that's where that piece is. The thing of it is we're working on this. We have been working on this. We are still picking up. I've got a half a dozen things that I've got on here of technical questions that we need to ask, and we're going to be putting that material together and trying to get answers to those questions, so that when we put something together for submission, it'll be persuasive and coherent for the issue. Okay. Any other questions? Or any other comments from the council? I'm sorry?
I was just wondering, the people that already voted it out of their towns, like Hollis, what about the town themselves? Have we had anybody reach out to them to find out what processes they took to go about getting it out of their town, what they focused on, and just, use what they did to kind of leverage what we could do?
They use the environmental issues. Plain and simple. It's a hard thing to overcome. It's a hard thing for them to overcome. And, we have said that several times here, that's the hook. I call it the hook. That's the hook that you have on this process, is coming up with those endangered species, the sensitive habitats, the sensitive wetlands and those sorts of things that makes it prohibitive for them to mitigate those and to change the route, okay? That's what pushed them out of Massachusetts, was the environmental issues. If you go online on our page, look for the memo that they sent. It's about 3 pages long. Go to page 2. It's December 12, 2014. Go to page 2. It's the third paragraph. Yeah.
Go ahead and read it. That's the quote.
See, in here, I said, one of the primary reasons that led to Kinder Morgan's decision to adopt the route that they're on now is that it will enable a very substantial portion of the proposed new pipeline to be adjacent to an existing corridor. Massachusetts was going through a lot of other properties, okay? The letter also states, in addition, the proposed route change will enable Kinder Morgan to avoid, in certain cases, and to minimize, in other cases, the crossing of Article 97 properties, which are conservation areas, okay? The laws down there are much more stringent than they are here. Because my wife owns a property down there, and the hoops she's got to go through under Article 5, is amazing. But anyway, and areas of critical environmental concern in Massachusetts. That's why they left, okay? I got an email from Jody last night from a woman in Hollis who said the reason they left down there is because of the environmental issues involving Beaver Brook, or the Beaver Brook area, okay? So the Conservation Commission is undertaking an extensive review to update their information that they pulled together a couple of years ago when they did the environmental assessment on Horse Hill Nature Preserve. They're going out there to look at it again to make sure to see what has changed, if anything, and to determine, the areas that are sensitive and the species that are involved and those sorts of issues to prepare something to be submitted during this process. All right?
Hi, Kathy Pitton. I live at 8 Roman Court. Let's say the environmental tactic does work and they decide not to go through Horse Hill. I think our message to them is we don't want them anywhere in Merrimack. We don't want them moving the route to a different route in Merrimack. We do not want them in Merrimack at all.
They're going the utility route because it avoids private property. Okay, that's what they're going the utility route to avoid private property. All right, even though the utility easement crosses the Horse Hill Nature Preserve, that was done years ago. Okay, but that's what they're saying that they're trying to do, is to avoid the private property issue. So for them to change their route and go back into that route is going to not. It is likely not to be to their advantage. Okay. Anything else, council members?
I got a quick question in regards to what you just said, Mr. Mahon. From my understanding, none of this pipeline's going underneath the power lines. Nor is it going to be on any of the public service property. It's going to go, the co-location is a new word they've come up with. That means it's going to run in a separate corridor on private property the whole way. Okay? If you read the paperwork, that's exactly what it says. Excuse me? Okay. Well, that's not what he just said. He just said it's going to go on the easement. The easement, okay, I abut public service property. They actually own the property right next to me. Okay, they've given me permission. It took 2 years to acquire permission to use my farm under there, which I was going to do this coming summer. Irregardless, that easement, which I researched prior to them purchasing that property, which used to be attached to my property, is the width of which they own now. It never went on my property.
Okay.
I mean, it went with it.
All right.
So what I'm saying is the easement is 150 feet, I believe, give or take. I can't give you specifics because I don't have that with me. But what I'm trying to caution you is this entire route is going to be on private property. It's not going to be underneath the public service power lines. So check your facts before you make a statement like you just did.
I appreciate the correction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I've got something quick to say. Wendy Thomas, 10 Wildcat Falls Road in Merrimack. One of the things that I noticed at the last town council meeting is that a member from Kinder Morgan was sitting in the back corner on the floor, one could say hiding from everybody in town. I would like to suggest at future meetings that if Matt Abdifar, is that the correct name?
Yeah.
Or Lucas Meyer or any other representative of Kinder Morgan attends any of these meetings, that they introduce themselves to the council and to the residents of Merrimack so that we can ask them questions. If they're not going to hold a public meeting, then we'll have individual ones right here.
I can assure you that Mr. Meyer has no information that he would be able to impart to you that were anywhere near accurate. Pardon?
Yeah, no, Lucas is a puppy. He he was employed by Kinder Morgan as a public affairs consultant in December of 14, so he's 2 months on the job. 2 months. He recently graduated from college, and prior to that, he was a campaign manager for Chris Pappas up in Manchester. He's a puppy. The other guy, Matt, he is the public affairs manager at Kinder Morgan, and he was hired in July 2014, so he's got 6 months under his belt.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.